December 20th, 1989, midnight, Panama City. The night sky erupts. F-117 stealth bombers, Apache helicopters, 27,000 American troops, the largest U.S. military operation since Vietnam. Operation Just Cause. The mission? Capture one man, Manuel Antonio Noriega, a Panamanian general, a dictator. And for nearly 2 decades, according to declassified CIA documents, one of Washington's most valuable assets in Latin America. Noriega wasn't just a dictator, he was a spy, a drug trafficker, a money launderer, and a CIA informant. He sold secrets to the Americans. He protected cocaine routes for the Medellin cartel. He laundered millions through Panamanian banks. And he did it all with the blessing and the paychecks of the United States government. But in 1989, something changed. Noriega went from asset to enemy, from ally to target, from protected to hunted. And the same government that paid him for decades decided to invade his country to arrest him. For 2 weeks, Noriega hid in the Vatican's diplomatic mission in Panama City, surrounded by U.S. troops, who blasted rock music at full volume, 24 hours a day. Psychological warfare to break him. On January 3, 1990, Noriega walked out, in handcuffs, flown to Miami, tried as a drug trafficker, convicted, imprisoned. But here's the question nobody wanted to answer. How does a man spend 20 years working for the CIA, taking their money, providing intelligence, facilitating covert operations, and end up in an American prison? This is the story of Manuel Noriega, the spy who became a monster, or maybe the monster the CIA created. This is history's wealth, where money tells the story of power. Manuel Antonio Noriega Moreno was born on February 11, 1934, in Panama City. His neighborhood was poor. His mother washed clothes for wealthy families. His father was absent or irrelevant. Manuel grew up in the shadow of the Panama Canal, the most strategic waterway in the world, controlled by the United States. In the 1930s and 1940s, Panama wasn't really an independent country. It was, according to historians, a protectorate. The U.S. controlled the canal zone. They had military bases, they had courts, they had their own police, and they treated Panamanians like second-class citizens. In their own country, Manuel Noriega grew up watching this, and he learned one lesson early. In Panama, real power didn't come from being Panamanian. It came from being useful to Americans. In 1952, at age 18, Noriega enrolled in the Corrillos Military School in Peru. It was one of the most prestigious military academies in Latin America. Noriega wasn't the smartest, he wasn't the strongest, but according to classmates interviewed later, he was the most calculating. He understood one thing better than anyone: information is power. Noriega didn't just study tactics, he studied people. He learned who had influence, who had secrets, and how to use both. In the early 1960s, according to declassified CIA documents, Noriega made his first contact with U.S. intelligence. He was a young officer in the Panamanian National Guard, and he started selling information about leftist student groups, about labor unions, about anyone in Panama who might be sympathetic to communism. This was the Cold War. The United States was obsessed with stopping the spread of communism in Latin America. Cuba had just gone communist in 1959. The Bay of Pigs invasion had failed in 1961, and Washington was desperate for intelligence anywhere in the region. Noriega gave them what they wanted: names, meetings, plans, and in exchange, he got money. Not much at first, a few $100s here and there, but it was enough. Noriega wasn't just working for the Americans. According to later investigations, he was also working for Cuban intelligence, Nicaraguan intelligence. Anyone who would pay Noriega didn't have loyalty. He had clients, and he sold to the highest bidder. But he was smart enough to never get caught, because the information he gave each side was just valuable enough to keep them paying, but never valuable enough to expose him. By the late 1960s, Noriega had risen to the rank of lieutenant, then captain, then major. He wasn't promoted because of battlefield heroics. He was promoted because he knew how to survive. In 1968, a military coup overthrew Panama's elected government. General Omar Torrijos took power. and Noriega became his right-hand man. Not because Torrijos trusted him, but because Noriega controlled intelligence. He knew everyone's secrets, and that made him indispensable. By the early 1970s, according to Senate Intelligence Committee reports, Noriega was officially on the CIA payroll. He received approximately $100,000 per year for providing intelligence on Cuban operations in Central America, leftist guerrilla movements, Soviet activities in the region. Noriega gave the CIA exactly what they wanted to hear, and they paid him. No questions asked. But Noriega wasn't just an informant. He was building something else, a network of contacts, of routes, of offshore accounts, because Noriega understood that in Panama there were three ways to make real money: the canal, the banks, and the drugs. Panama in the 1970s was unique. It had the canal, controlling shipping between Atlantic and Pacific, strict banking secrecy laws, no extradition treaties with the U.S., a tiny military that couldn't threaten American interests. According to financial investigators, this made Panama the perfect hub for money laundering, drug trafficking arms, smuggling covert operations, and Noriega controlled the choke points. He controlled who could move through Panama, who could bank there, who could hide there, and he sold access to everyone. But Noriega didn't just want to be an informant. He wanted to own the bridge between North and South, and in the 1970s, that bridge was cocaine. By the late 1970s, according to DEA reports, Panama had become the Switzerland of Latin America, except instead of chocolate and watches, it specialized in drug money, dirty money, and covert operations. And Manuel Noriega controlled the flow. Panama's banking laws, established in the 1970s, were some of the most secretive in the world. Numbered accounts, no questions asked, no reporting requirements. Perfect for tax evasion, money laundering, hiding wealth from governments. According to financial analysts, by 1980, Panama had over 120 international banks, more banks than grocery stores. And many of them existed for one purpose: to clean dirty money. In the early 1980s, the Medellin cartel was producing tons of cocaine, but they had a problem. How do you move $50 million in cash from Miami back to Colombia? You can't just wire it. You can't just carry it on a plane. You need infrastructure. You need banks that don't ask questions. You need a country with weak law enforcement and strong secrecy laws. You need Panama. And according to testimony from former cartel associates, you need Manuel Noriega. According to DEA investigations and later court testimony, here's how the arrangement worked. Step 1. Collection. The Medellin cartel collected cash in the United States. Drug proceeds. Millions of dollars in small bills. Step 2. Transport. The cash was flown to Panama, sometimes in private planes, sometimes in commercial cargo, often with the protection of Panamanian officials. Step 3. Deposit. The cash was deposited in Panamanian banks, into numbered accounts, controlled by shell corporations, with anonymous ownership. Step 4. Layering. The money was transferred between accounts, between banks, between countries, creating a paper trail so complex that investigators couldn't follow it. Step 5. Integration. The clean money was used to buy real estate in Miami, businesses in Colombia, investments in legitimate companies. The cartel got clean money, the banks got fees. And Noriega? According to prosecutors, he got a cut of everything. How much did Noriega charge? According to testimony from cartel accountants who later cooperated with authorities, $200,000 to $300,000 per cocaine shipment that transited through Panama. Millions more in annual fees for banking protection, a percentage of money laundering operations. Conservative estimates suggest Noriega made between $300 million and $500 million from drug-related activities during the 1980s. But the real number? Probably higher, because according to financial investigators, much of it was never tracked. Here's the uncomfortable truth. According to declassified documents and congressional testimony, the CIA knew about Noriega's drug connections. They knew he was taking money from the Medellin cartel. They knew he was facilitating money laundering, and they didn't stop him. Why? Because Noriega was useful. In the 1980s, the Reagan administration was fighting a secret war in Nicaragua. They were funding the Contras, anti-communist rebels fighting the Sandinista government. But Congress had banned direct U.S. funding, so the CIA needed covert supply routes, bases in friendly countries, people who could operate in gray areas. Noriega provided all three. According to Senate investigations, Noriega allowed the CIA to use Panama as a staging ground for Contra operations, fly weapons, and supplies through Panamanian airspace, coordinate intelligence operations from Panama City. In exchange, the CIA paid him hundreds of thousands of dollars annually, protected him from DEA investigations, looked the other way on his drug connections. By the mid-1980s, according to intelligence analysts, Noriega was living a double life. To the CIA, he was a valuable intelligence asset, providing information on Cuban activities, Sandinista movements, Soviet operations in Central America. To the cartels, he was a facilitator, providing banking infrastructure, transit routes, protection from law enforcement to Panama. He was the de facto ruler. General Torrijos had died in a plane crash in 1981, and Noriega had consolidated power. He controlled the military, the intelligence services, the presidential palace, through puppet presidents, and according to financial records later seized, he was getting rich. Noriega didn't keep his money in Panama. According to prosecutors, he hid it in Switzerland, multiple numbered accounts, estimated $20 to $30 million Luxembourg, shell corporations, real estate holdings, Cayman Islands, offshore trusts, investment accounts, France, property in Paris Bank, accounts under false names. He owned apartments in Paris and London, ranches in Panama, businesses across Latin America, all purchased through shell companies, all hidden behind layers of financial secrecy. While Noriega got rich, Panama suffered. According to economists, the country's economy became dependent on money laundering fees, drug transit fees, offshore banking. Legitimate businesses struggled, unemployment rose, and ordinary Panamanians lived under a military dictatorship. But as long as the money flowed, Noriega didn't care. But there was one thing Noriega never understood. To Washington, he was never a partner. He was a tool, and tools are disposable. In 1986, everything started to unravel. In June 1986, investigative journalist Seymour Hersh published an article in the New York Times. The headline, "Panama Strongman Said to Trade in Drugs, Arms, and Illicit Money." The article detailed Noriega's connections to the Medellin cartel, his role in money laundering payments from the CIA, human rights abuses in Panama. It was the first time the American public learned that their government was paying a drug trafficker. And it was a political earthquake. Within months, the Senate began investigating. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee. The questions were brutal. How long has the CIA been paying Noriega? Did the CIA know about his drug connections? Why are we supporting a dictator who works with cocaine traffickers? The CIA's answers were evasive, but the evidence was clear. According to testimony, the CIA had known about Noriega's drug involvement since at least 1972, and they had continued paying him for 15 years. Before 1986, Noriega's value to the CIA outweighed his criminal activity. But after the Hersh article, the political cost became too high. The Reagan administration faced a choice: continue protecting Noriega and face domestic backlash, or cut him loose. They chose the latter. In February 1988, a federal grand jury in Miami indicted Manuel Noriega on drug trafficking charges. The charges included conspiracy to import cocaine, money laundering, racketeering. It was unprecedented. The U.S. had just indicted a sitting foreign head of state, an ally, a man they had paid for 2 decades. Noriega responded by declaring, "I am a victim of American imperialism." He refused to step down. By 1988, Panama was in chaos. The economy was collapsing. The U.S. had imposed economic sanctions, frozen Panamanian assets, cut off banking access. Opposition groups were protesting in the streets, and Noriega responded with force. According to human rights organizations, his forces beat protesters, arrested opposition leaders, shut down independent media. The images on American television were devastating. A dictator, paid by the CIA, brutalizing his own people. In May 1989, Panama held elections. The opposition candidate, Guillermo Endara, won. by a wide margin. Noriega annulled the results, and according to witnesses, his forces beat Ndara and his running mates in the streets, on camera, for the world to see. It gave the U.S. the justification it needed. On December 16, 1989, Panamanian forces stopped a car carrying 4 U.S. military officers. A confrontation ensued. Shots were fired. One American officer, Marine Lieutenant Robert Paz, was killed. Another officer and his wife were detained and beaten. President George H.W. Bush had his casus belli, the justification for invasion. For months, the Pentagon had been planning. Codename, Operation Just Cause. The mission: remove Noriega from power, restore democracy in Panama, protect American lives, secure the Panama Canal. 27,000 troops, the largest American military operation since Vietnam, all to arrest one man. For years, Noriega thought the money and the secrets would protect him, but he forgot one rule of empires. When they decide you're a problem, they don't fire you, they erase you. December 20th, 1989, 12:45 a.m. The invasion began. F-117 Nighthawk stealth bombers struck first, targeting Noriega's headquarters, the Comandancia in Panama City. Then came the paratroopers, the 82nd Airborne, Rangers, Navy SEALs, Marine Infantry. According to military reports, 27,000 American troops invaded Panama in the first 48 hours. They faced resistance from the Panamanian Defense Forces, Noriega's paramilitary units, armed loyalists. But it was never a fair fight. The Pentagon reported 23 American deaths, 314 Panamanian military deaths. But according to human rights organizations and independent investigators, the civilian death toll was much higher. Estimates range from 300 to 3,000 civilians killed. Neighborhoods were destroyed. The poor barrio of El Chorrillo, next to the Comandancia, was burned to the ground. Thousands were left homeless, all to capture one man. Noriega wasn't in the Comandancia when it was bombed. He had fled. For 10 days, he hid, moving between safe houses, trying to negotiate, trying to escape. But U.S. forces had sealed the country. Every border, every airport, every port. There was nowhere to go. On December 24, 1989, Christmas Eve, Noriega sought refuge in the Vatican's diplomatic mission in Panama City, the Nunciatura Apostolica, diplomatic sanctuary. The U.S. couldn't enter. International law protected him there, but they could make his life miserable. U.S. forces surrounded the building and blasted music, loudly, 24 hours a day. Rock music, heavy metal. According to reports, they played Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses, Voodoo Chile by Jimi Hendrix, Nowhere to Run by Martha and the Vandellas. The message was clear: you can't hide forever. For 10 days, Noriega endured, but the pressure was too much. The Vatican wanted him gone. The Panamanians wanted him gone. And the Americans weren't leaving. On January 3, 1990, Manuel Noriega walked out of the Vatican mission in his general's uniform. He was arrested by U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration agents, handcuffed, flown to Miami on a C-130, and jailed as prisoner number 41586-079. Noriega's trial began in 1991. The charges, 8 counts of drug trafficking, racketeering money, laundering. The trial lasted 7 months. The prosecution presented testimony from cartel members, financial records, surveillance tapes. Noriega's defense argued he was a CIA asset. The U.S. had authorized his activities. He was being scapegoated. The jury didn't buy it. On April 9, 1992, Noriega was convicted on 8 counts. He was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison. After his arrest, U.S. authorities tried to seize Noriega's fortune. They found $6 million in Swiss accounts, $2 million in Luxembourg. Various properties, total recovered, less than $10 million. But according to investigators, Noriega had accumulated between $300 million and $500 million. Where did the rest go? Hidden in accounts under false names, transferred to family members, lost in the offshore maze he had helped create. Most of it was never recovered. Manuel Noriega spent over 20 years in prison, first in the U.S., then extradited to France in 2010, then to Panama in 2011. He died in 2017, at age 83, in a Panamanian hospital, under guard. The man who had made hundreds of millions died with nothing. The man who had wielded absolute power died a prisoner. And the system that created him? It's still there. Panama is still a banking haven, still a hub for offshore money, still a transit point for goods moving between continents. The Panama Papers in 2016 revealed that nothing had really changed. Billions still flow through Panamanian shell companies, hidden from tax authorities, hidden from investigators. The infrastructure Noriega helped build is still there, just with different names, different faces, but the same purpose. Manuel Noriega was a monster, a dictator who brutalized his own people, a drug trafficker who facilitated billions in cocaine, a money launderer who corrupted an entire banking system. But he didn't create himself. He was created by the CIA, by American foreign policy, by a system that valued short-term intelligence gains over long-term consequences. For 20 years, Washington paid Noriega, protected him, used him, and when he became inconvenient, they invaded his country to arrest him. The invasion killed hundreds, maybe thousands, of civilians. It cost billions of dollars. It destroyed neighborhoods, all to capture one man, a man they had created. Noriega's story isn't unique. According to historians, it's a pattern. The U.S. has supported dictators across Latin America, paid them, armed them, trained them, and when they stopped being useful, discarded them. Noriega was just one name in a long list, and the system that created him, it's still operating. Different countries, different names, but the same logic. Support whoever is useful, no matter how corrupt, no matter how violent, until they're not useful anymore. Subscribe to History's Wealth, where we expose the systems that create monsters and the empires that profit from them. Because in the end, history doesn't repeat itself. It teaches, and those who listen survive.